More on taking control of your photos with Jason Snell. This is Mac Voices. This edition of Mac Voices is supported by Notion AI, the one tool that does it all. Try Notion AI for free at notion.com/MacVoices. There's so many ways I want to go with this, and we only have so much time. Okay, so let's shift to the book itself, and
Sure.
how should someone approach this book? Who Look, if you're a novice, you're probably going to approach it as a novice, obviously. But if I'm a photos user or have been, which probably 99% of us have been, um, how do I approach the book? What should I be
Right.
looking for to get the most out of it?
So the book really is like, how does photos work and what can you do in photos? So what I would say is the advantage of it is if you read it, first off, if there's something you're interested in learning more about, you can go to the chapter about that and hopefully you will learn more because the goal here of this book is for me to detail how to do everything that photos lets you do. So all the editing controls and what they let you do. Because you can do some pretty sophisticated editing in photos if you want to. I should mention, there will be an update. I haven't started working on it yet, but the release of the iPhone always introduces a bunch of new photos and camera features that I haven't had this summer to prepare for. And there was a huge overhaul to images captured on iPhone 16s via a process called Photographic Styles, which has it's replacing both a thing called Photographic Styles that was there before and themes, basically filters for photos. It's a whole thing. So there will be an update for that, and with more about Apple Intelligence as well. Although there's a little bit of that in the book about things like cleanup, which is a really nice feature that's marked as Apple Intelligence, but it lets you kind of remove items in the background of your photos and all of that. So that's the idea is if there's something you don't know about photos, if you read the book, you should learn it. You should be able to learn it. My hope would be that if you go through the book, you're going to say, "Oh, I didn't know that was a thing that you could do with that." And so, yeah, I talk about search and finding photos. I talk about assigning faces to people in and building that people and pets library. On the Mac, there are still some unique features. I talk about smart albums. There's a revised version of my chapter about building books and printing photos and building calendars where I'm a real believer. So what I said before about like why do you take these photos if not to see them later? Part of what I believe is that getting them in your world is a part of that. So building books or ordering prints or doing calendars. We do a calendar every year that's got photos on every month that are taken from that month of previous year or in previous years, depending. And like that's a great way because we just turned to October and like, oh, here are some new pictures of our kids in October. That's great. Um, so I've got a whole section about that I've updated. That I'm hoping to do a little more work on for the next edition, and also a 6-color story about it. I kind of want to report back. I've ordered books from a bunch of these. There are like 5 of them now. There used to be 2. There are a bunch of different apps that let you make books and calendars in photos. And I'm a big fan of large format prints. That's another one. Is like it's really great to take favorite photos and print them out like poster sized and put them in frames and put them on your walls. I think you really should see your photos. And then the other way you can see your photos, not in the real world, but on your devices, and that's a place where Apple keeps making improvements. So the book covers. It was on the iPhone last year, and now it's on the iPad as well. There are lots of sophisticated kind of photos features that are part of the wallpaper and lock screen settings on the iPhone and the iPad, where not only can you pick like a photo from your library and show it as the background of your home screen or your lock screen, but you can shuffle through collections of them based on that analysis. So my wife now has has her lock screen is photos of our kids, and they're all picked by the Photos app, and there's new collections of them all the time, and it has allowed her to find these photos that we haven't seen in years that are just they're in the library, but for whatever reason they're not the one that got printed out or whatever, and it's delightful. And you have the ability to do that on the iPhone and the iPad, and there's a new version of the photos face for the Apple Watch that will do the same thing. And my friend Mike Hurley has photos of his wife as the photo face, and it's the same principle, which is they rotate. So it's a different one every time, and it's doing like subject analysis. So like the time changes location on the Apple Watch face based on where the subject of the photo is. It kind of crops it. It tries to crop it in a way that it fits on the Apple Watch, and then puts the time where it's not covering the face of the person on the Apple Watch. And if it can do it, it actually uses the subject detection to like put part of the time like behind their shoulder instead of in front, so you get a depth effect from it. Like there's so much Apple is trying to do to give you ways to have your photos delight you. And so a lot of that stuff is in the book too, where Apple has added it for like the iPhone and the iPad and the Apple Watch. So that's my ideal, Chuck, is I'm trying to go through everything that Photos does and write it down, because I think that's the truth of it. Is we all get stuck in ruts with software where we're like, I just use it the way I use it, and that's all it is. And so if you're like, what are these collections? I don't understand them. It's like, well, I talk about collections a lot because, like I said, it used to be that they all behaved a little differently. Now they all pretty much follow. There's slight variations, but they're basically the same. They all generate a movie automatically. They're all curated, but you can show all if you want to. And that's nice, because then I only had to describe how that works one time. But the nice thing about that is, once you learn how collections work, all the collections work like that, which is helpful, because like I said before, it used to be like, oh, this is an album. An album's not a memory. Memories are different from albums, and that's basically not true anymore. Apple's still generating memories, which are like completely like algorithm driven. Like, here is a collection of photos that are sort of related in some way. Maybe you will find delight in them, and maybe you will, but like that's not the I think sometimes people got the perception of what are now collections and thinking this is Apple throwing a bunch of random photos at me that it thinks I want to see, but I don't actually want to see them. And I would say the beauty of understanding collections is they're not all like that. Some of them are much more kind of empirically driven, where it's, here is a trip you took, here are photos from 3 days ago, here are all these photos of your child. And those can be great too. So hopefully, if you're like, I don't understand this part of Photos, or what are all the editing things in Photos actually for, hopefully the book will tell you about that. And then some of the new stuff for the iPhone 16, making more work for me, Apple, will be out in a free update to the 4th edition that will come later this year.
Jason, I love the fact that this part of the conversation is you're making us think about photos and what can be done with them, and then the book gives me the mechanics of, okay, that's how I do it. But the fact that, I mean, you've already given me some things that, gee, I never thought about doing that, and now I want to go and look up and see just how I accomplish it, if I don't already have an idea. And maybe that's the best thing. If you've given me an idea, then I go and play with it myself, and if I can do it, great, and if not, I get the book and let you tell me how.
Right. David Pogue back in the day did his Missing Manuals series. And I wouldn't say my book is a manual to photos, but I do think that there's something to that idea that essentially, I mean, his slogan was the book that should have come in the box, right? The idea that and now there's so few books, computer books and stuff out there anymore. Like, the documentation and explanation for how software works has kind of vanished. And doing a book like this, that's the goal, is if you care about photos or would like to understand the Photos app better, somebody is going to need to sit you down and explain how it works. And this is that in PDF form. Essentially, is me spending my summer and spending the last 10 years, but updating it every summer and taking a bunch of screenshots and saying, here's how you do this and here's how you do that. And hopefully that gets, because there's so much in this app, and that's the thing. That's how I really felt what Apple was trying to do with their interface change. Is I get what they're saying, which is, we've put so much work into this other part of this app, and if we don't show it to you, you don't even know it's there. And I know there are a bunch of people who push back and say, oh, I don't like it to change, I just want a grid. But like, I got to be honest, I think those people are a minority. I think that they are stuck in their ways a little bit, and I think they're like, I think there are very few use cases that are not improved by understanding Apple is doing all of this organizational work for you. I think the days of the infinite bare, boring grid are over. Like you should be able to get to it, but like and I do it. I mean, I take screenshots. I need to save them, and like I do it too. But that's only part of the thing. And so you need to have a broader horizon because Apple's doing actually a lot, and the search thing is amazing. Like really, um, saying that again, they're adding an Apple Intelligence thing where you can just type a phrase and it'll generate a movie for you and a collection, which is pretty amazing. But just the search alone to be able to very specifically say it's a photo with this in it, like it's got my kid and there's like a teacher holding a clipboard and it'll find it. It's amazing, and you don't have to what's the searchable keyword there and tap on it and all that. You just search for it. So I think that's one of the challenges is Apple knows it too. They've built this incredibly sophisticated piece of software, and then nobody knows that it exists. So how do they get this stuff to people? And one way to do it is to put collections on the launch screen of photos, and one of the ways to do it is you buy my book and you learn it that way. That's another way to do it.
The iPhone, one of the big things every time is the camera's getting better. Sometimes that's the tentpole feature of the next iPhone.
Yeah.
And so that means that this book becomes more valuable the more you value photos, because I want the best camera that I can put in my pocket and have with me all the time. And so why am I not taking full advantage of having those photos? And now I will be taking better advantage because you've inspired me, you've educated me, and now you're going to educate me even more with the book. So
yeah, I
good
tried.
job, Jason.
Thank you. Last year, I added a section. Last year before, a chapter about the camera app because I realized that I needed to describe some of the functionality that's in the camera app because you're right, it absolutely feeds directly into what's available in the Photos app, and that's even more true this year, which is why I'm going to have to make a bunch of revisions there because of that new photographic styles feature, which is not what it used to be and what all of the different filters used to be, which was the old photographic styles was like, I want all my photos to be warmer. And that was great because it was you being able to set some defaults there for when you capture images. But it was a one-time thing, and then the capture was the warmer thing. And if you didn't like that later, too bad. And the new photographic styles on the iPhone 16 models is not like that. Um, it's a sort of a post-capture processing that happens, and the data, um, assuming you capture it in sort of Apple's default formats, the data that is required to reprocess that in any style kind of rides along with the photos. So the example that's the most stark is if you have a photographic style, and there are a couple of them, to shoot in black and white, and then 2 years from now you look at that black and white photo and you're like, God, why did I shoot that in black and white? I wish that was in color. Like I used to shoot black and white film on my camera when I was a kid and all that. I'm like, I wish I'd captured that in color. What was I thinking? I was going through a phase. Photographic styles on the iPhone 16, the color data is still in the file. It's processing it for a black and white image, but all that data is still there. And if you edit and change the photographic style, the color comes back. And it's not fake color, it's the real color data. Because Apple has they're capturing more data and putting it in the file. The HEIF container contains more data. And that's a mind-blowing kind of thing because what it means is it's not a filter because it's acting on data at a lower level and then reprocessing the whole image. So it's more powerful than just using a filter on a completely locked photo. They're going down a few layers, and it's really interesting. And because I think part of caring about the Photos app for a lot of people is they care about the photos they take on their phone, especially. And the amazing thing about having a modern smartphone is you can go start to finish. You can shoot and then look at all the photos you shot and pick one and then edit it and do some pretty sophisticated editing, even in the Photos app, let alone going out to a third party app. And then you can share it. And you can do all of that with the same device in the same moment if you want to. And that's pretty incredible. So I've tried in the book to spend a little more time thinking about the camera app. And like I said, updating how some of this new stuff works, which is why I have to do a revision, because now I have to explain that there are these photographic styles, old version, there's photographic styles, new version. And if you shoot, and then there's like the themes. And if you shoot, if you in your library, you'll have like a photo I shot on my iPhone 14. Well, it has these styles. The photograph I shot on my iPhone 16 has a completely different interface, and that's actually the interesting thing about the Photos app is it changes based on the format of the image you're editing. So if you're editing an older image, you'll have a different set of controls than if you're editing one of these new images, because it knows. It's a little bit like when they introduced live photos. Like if you have a photo that has a live photo as a part of it, the interface is different because it knows that there's a movie attached to this still. And the same will be true about all the iPhone 16 stuff that's shot with photographic styles. So yeah, that's that. Trying to figure out how shooting with the camera feeds into the Photos app and how there's like a workflow there is part of the challenge that I think originally I didn't take up with the book. That in the last year or two I've had to add because it really doesn't make sense not to cover it.
This edition of MacVoices is supported by Notion. Try Notion for free at notion.com/MacVoices. Have you wanted to put AI to work for you, but don't know where to start? I can give you a hint. Notion. The new Notion AI is a single AI tool that does it all. Search across Notion and other apps, generate docs in your own style, analyze PDFs and images, and chat with you about anything. That sounds rather bold, doesn't it? But it's true. Let's take PDFs, for example. We're drowning in them, right? I get tons of PDFs each week, all of them supposedly crammed with important information. If I tried to read them all, I wouldn't get anything else done and wouldn't remember half of it. With Notion, I can get them boiled down to something both manageable and useful. The torrent becomes a tight stream of actionable information. And that's just a start. Notion is a perfect place to organize your tasks, track, write docs, and collaborate with your team. And maybe best of all, the more you use Notion, the better it gets, because it gets to know you, your style, and how you want to present yourself. Concerned about security? Don't be. Notion AI is designed to protect your privacy. Notion AI partners are contractually prohibited from using your data to train their AI models, and it will only reference content that you have access to. Time is money, so get Notion now and save some of both. Try Notion for free when you go to notion.com/MacVoices. That's all lowercase Notion, NOTION.com/MacVoices to try the powerful, easy-to-use Notion AI today. And when you use my link, you're supporting my show. Notion.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Notion for supporting MacVoices. You just made me understand the issue of computational photography even at a deeper level, with the black and white and storing the color data as well.
Right.
I mean that seems kind of obvious, but
your camera, you take a shot and it's not fixed. That's the part that gets me. I think we've all thought, and it's a good metaphor from film. You take a picture and maybe you change the settings of how you capture it, and then you capture it and you're done. And you can make changes to the done thing later, but you're making changes to the done thing. And with photographic styles on the 16, you're not. That's the part that's kind of bizarre, is that all that data is still there, and it's still there on your Mac. And on your Mac, on Sequoia, you can edit it there and change it too. It's not just on the device in the moment of capture. It's just yeah, I agree. It's a mind bender. The idea that you're setting up your camera to take black and white photographs, and later, if you decide that you'd rather they be in color, it's not a problem because all the color data is still there. Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Or if you want everything to be blue and cold and you're like, I'm very depressed and everything's blue and cold. And then 3 years later, you're like, why was I so down on myself then? Everything's more rosy now. You can literally go in and make everything rosy instead. And it totally will just do it, which is, and you're not trying to resuscitate warmth out of an image that's been drained of it, which is impossible. You're actually taking the existing warm image data that is still in the file and bringing it back, which is a thing you can do and is possible to do, which is pretty cool. It's pretty awesome. But again, I don't want to come across as endorsing this feature because it makes me very upset that I have to update the book now. But yeah, that's what Apple does. They're always adding new features when you least expect it.
Think of it as financial security, Jason. Does that help?
I mean, it's a free update, Chuck.
Oh, okay.
It'll be a free update. But I would say for the listeners, if you're thinking about buying this book, you can think of it as financial security, because if you buy the book now and I say it doesn't have the photographic styles in it, I owe it to you, and there will be an update. And that's one of the cool things about doing ebooks, is that we will push an update out to version 4 that'll be like version 4.1, and it'll have all the photo style stuff in it. You'll just be able to download that, and then your book will be updated, which is not something we could do if it was on paper.
So takecontrolbooks.com is where you go to get Jason's book and give him financial security. Jason, do you know how much the book is?
Oh man, well, I think there's a deal. If you have a previous edition, I think there's an upgrade price. I don't know what the upgrade price is, but there is one. And the book itself, if you're buying it from scratch, is $14.99. And there's a bundle with Jeff Carlson's iPhone photography book for $19. And Jeff Carlson is a great photographer, and that is a very cool book. So that's a pretty good too for talking about exactly what we were just talking about, and the I think vitally important workflow that is shooting on iPhone and then editing later on iPhone or iPad or Mac.
So if you have an iPhone, you're shooting photos, and who isn't shooting photos with their iPhone, you need this book. That's just all there is to it. Because just in this last however long we've been talking, I've learned so much about how to think about photos, the application, and what I can do with my photos. And so I appreciate that, Jason. I'm glad we were able to share this with everyone. Hopefully everyone will go buy the book and get more out of their photos.
I'm glad that it inspired you, and that is, I mean, that's one of the things. I can't do this for everything, but having this book means that I do spend the summer digging into photos, and as a result, I do come out of it thinking, this happens too. This happened to me the other day where somebody was like, "Oh, I can't believe it doesn't do this thing," and I'm like, "It totally does that thing. I can tell you all about it because I had to go deep down into that book or into that app in order to write the book." And so yeah, if you want to. I guess I would say that to the listeners too. If what we've talked about here has made you go, "Oh, I didn't know that," like that's kind of the point. Is I've tried to dig into it and unearth this stuff because I know that a lot of people don't notice. And you do an iOS update or a macOS update, and a bunch of stuff changed, but you don't always notice the stuff that's changing in the margins or in the first party apps and photos. For example, you might be like, "Oh, look at all these changes to the lock screen on the iPad," and you don't notice the fact that your Photos app has totally changed in a bunch of interesting ways. So that's it's all there, hopefully, in the book for you to discover. I've spent my summer doing that, so you didn't have to.
Hey, before I let you go, I want to make sure you let folks know what else you do when you're not writing, spending your summer writing Take Control books.
Sure. In the grand scheme of my year, it is only a tiny fraction that is spent on this book. The things I would like to most mention, I do a website called sixcolors.com where me, along with some pals of mine, including my buddy Dan Morin, we are writing about mostly Apple stuff. It's a blog, but so my reviews of products are there, and commentary and all of that. And we have a great membership community if people want to join, but there's also a bunch of stuff that's just there for free. And I do a bunch of podcasts. I would say the two most prominent are on relay.fm. You can find Upgrade, which I do every week with Mike Hurley, which is a great podcast about Apple and related subjects. And every Tuesday, I am one of the panelists on MacBreak Weekly on Twit, hosted by Leo Laporte with Andy Anatko and Alex Lindsay. And we have fun over there talking about broad topics in Apple world. And I would say for this audience, those are the two things that I think you should podcasts that I think you would find most interesting, as well as $6.com for your eyeballs.
Great. Jason, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for all the wisdom. We got to do it more often. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, we should. We should. It's always great to talk to you, Chuck. Yes, sooner this time. We'll do it. I'll see you again sooner. Let's promise.
There you go. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. I'm truly inspired. I really mean it, to go and do more with my photos. I hope you are too. Go get Jason's book. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.